And that's exactly what the spiritual movement within, say, I mean, from my reading and studies, or at least in three, or even Buddhists that I have had conversation with and dialogue with, they talk about the fact that because this process that leads us towards this uplifting of the spirit is individualistic. So it depends on one's preconceived ideas and conditions, etc., etc.
And how we interpret what we perceive.
And spirituality, to begin with, there is a component of individualistic component within it. But once these groups or individuals come together to constitute a community, then by communication and dialogue, one begins to realize how common these experiences are.
Where the commonality is and where the diversity is.
What is unique to you and what is common to everyone. So this component in spirituality, this duality is always there. That there is a component within it that is individualistic, and there is a component, or there are components which is common and shared between everyone. If you look at the history of Spain, for example, or Andalusia, as the Muslims would call it, and read the literature about Christian, Muslim, and Jewish mystics for nearly 700 years of conversation, they used to get together and have dialogue about what were the individualistic component and what were the communal component between the two. Yes.
That must have been a fascinating 700 years.
Exactly. And now we try to deny ever that these 700 years made a contribution to philosophy, history, but particularly the mystic tradition and spirituality. So these are there is an element of what I detect from the first question that you raised is not this issue that every spiritual experience has an element of individual element within it and a communal component. It's when we detach ourselves and our existence become a point in the space independent of everything else.
Well, then you're forsaking the relationship.
Exactly. So now I have to, to borrow a paraphrase a little bit, the salvation becomes independent of anything else. One's salvation. One's spirituality becomes independent of people that are around you, the environment which is around you, the whole cosmos which is around you. You become an independent entity. This kind of relationship.
No offense intended, but to me that sounds psychologically unhealthy.
That's why we try to reject it.
Yeah, because life is, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, life is interconnected.
That's
whatever
what
I do
perceive.
has an effect on what's around me. Whatever happens around me has an effect on me.
That's what we perceived, and more communal interpretation of theology accepts as facts. But when you talk to people that the rest of the world are being engulfed in fire, I continue with my normal life, which is going out to work, driving my SUVs and having my holidays as if nothing is happening. Haiti is sinking in crisis, it doesn't matter to me. Iraq is blown to pieces, it doesn't matter to me. American drones are bombing Pakistani civilians. My salvation, God has been brought down to earth to look after me. That's it. This is kind of a spirituality, is the one that we're trying to...
Yeah. I mean, the notion to me seems so absurd.
I have heard it so many times, unfortunately. This is what we try to reject. Once we accept that humanity as a whole is a big family, as a one communal family. So a pain anywhere, I remember Martin Luther King, I mean, when there is a need, we are not complete until everyone is complete. That notion brings community. In our tradition...
there's no one who doesn't matter.
Yes, that's exactly...
Every single person is the fingerprint of the divine.
We tend to use the narrative I mean, we go to the book of Genesis and we say that we are all created in the image of the divine. But
Okay.
on a practical basis,
We don't live like we believe that.
Exactly. We don't see the divine in everyone. Otherwise, we would not have done most of the things that we are doing.
Mm-hmm.
In our tradition, I mean, there are a number of mystical personalities that they use the metaphor of a body to relate to human community. That if in the same way that as in a human body, if a part or a component or a finger or something is in pain, the rest of the body reacts and responds. This is how we human beings have to respond to the ills, to the pains, to the poverty, to the destitution, to everything else that is happening around us.
And if there is a part of humanity somewhere in the world that has been left behind in our industrial technological race for the future, how could anyone imagine that at some point that is not going to become the opportunity that destroys us?
Yes. I mean, going back to the point that you raised right at the beginning, that the community, the sense that, I mean, let's call it the positive sense that we want to discuss it, tries to resolve conflict rather than ignore conflict.
To resolve it, you first have to acknowledge that it's there.
It exists.
And then you figure out what its qualities are, what
and
its
how
dynamics are.
I or me or my community or my groups as individuals with our resources, we can help to resolve to resolve conflict. That takes over practically everything until the matter is dealt with. We can't just ignore it and say, well, it's not my concern. As soon as I said it's not my concern, then my way of thinking is different. It's not a communal way of thinking.